Hey monsters! Thanks for tuning in to Murder Murder News, the true crime cult for the latest breaking news, murdery memes, TV reviews, podcast recommendations, and all things spooky. We're starting a true crime cult. There won't be any Kool-Aid, but there will be tea. That's right, we're spilling the true crime tea, playing with some baby goats, and probably making flower crowns. I'm television's Aurora Katie.
And I'm your online murder friend, Angelina. Cults are no fun alone, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell all of your true crime friends. This is the Week in True Crime.
Murder, murder, news.
Over the past few decades, the world as we know it has completely transformed. An unending list of modern inventions have come and gone, but it's easy to overlook the tiny, gradual ways in which our day-to-day lives have changed. Today in 2020, we can recognize that shit got pretty weird recently. We often joke about what kind of a shock it would be to wake up from a 5-year-long coma today. How would we stomach the facts when presented to us all at once? Would we even believe our eyes when we finally awoke to Trump as president and a global coronavirus pandemic? But there are so many smaller details that we've integrated into our daily lives in recent decades that we rarely stop to think about. What would it be like to open your very first email account today? To see the Facebook newsfeed for the first time? To try to figure out how to actually make a call on an iPhone? To see your first Netflix film or set foot in your first ever Walmart? Robert Dubois has been experiencing a lifetime of firsts, all in the past month. He has spent 2/3 of his life behind bars, wrongfully incarcerated since the age of 18. He's now 55 years old. The bizarre contrast of life in 2020 is that while we marvel at the progress made in the world of technology, the justice system in particular is stuck in some old ways that truly do not serve us. For example, bite mark evidence. Bite mark evidence has been used to reach a conviction in several cases over the years. The INNOCENCE Project, which works to reverse wrongful convictions, has identified at least 33 cases of wrongful convictions and indictments in the Tampa Bay area alone that stem from unreliable bite mark evidence. For decades, we have relied on the testimony of forensic odontologists who asserted that they could identify the source of a bite mark, but years of research have proven this to be patently false. Recently, the American Board of Forensic Odontology has revised its guidelines to state that no conclusion shall be expressed linking a bite mark to detention. Thus, Robert Dubois' trial would have had a very different outcome if it took place today. Instead, Dubois was tried in 1985, a time when bite mark evidence was very confidently relied upon. Robert Dubois was convicted of sexually assaulting and beating a 19-year-old Barbara Grams to death. Grams was picked up on her way home from work at a Tampa mall, and her badly beaten body was discovered behind a dental clinic. Despite no eyewitness evidence placing him at the scene, prosecutors fabricated a story wherein Robert Dubois picked up Barbara Grams while driving around Tampa with his brother and a friend. Robert's friend and brother were never convicted due to a lack of evidence. Robert, however, was convicted when a dental expert claimed that a mark on Barbara's cheek matched Robert's own dental impression. Though we have recently learned that the wound on Barbara Graham's cheek wasn't even a bite mark. A jailhouse informant contributed that Dubois had confided in him, confessing to the crime. A jury recommended life in prison, but the judge pushed for the death penalty for Dubois, and he sat on death row for 3 years before his sentence was reduced to life in prison. Often in solitary confinement, Robert lived in 6 different Florida prisons since his initial conviction. All along, he maintained his innocence and waited patiently for the truth to come to light. Recording the testimony of jailhouse informants is yet another outdated process that results in a mess of injustice. This particular informant was facing multiple life sentences for kidnapping, armed robbery, and battery of a law enforcement officer. His cooperation in Dubois' case earned him a reduced sentence, and when a death penalty was secured, he received a further reduction to time served and was immediately released, despite a contradictory statement from the state attorney's office that he would go right back to prison to finish his sentence. The Innocence Project points out that the promise of leniency and other benefits for their testimony strongly encourages these witnesses to lie, and often these benefits offered to the witnesses are never disclosed. Of course, in 1985, DNA evidence was not used in murder trials, and Dubois was convicted on bite mark evidence and informant testimony alone. In 2007, Dubois filed a motion to reopen the case and examine the DNA evidence. The motion was denied, and Dubois learned that the evidence from his trial had been destroyed in 1990 as part of a routine procedure. In September of last year, the Innocence Project asked that Dubois's case be reviewed, and it was discovered that the county medical examiner's office had preserved rape kit samples that weren't used in the trial. These samples were tested and found that Robert Dubois had absolutely no involvement. Instead, the evidence points to two other individuals who have not been named. One in particular matched the bulk of the DNA evidence and is now being considered a person of interest. Prosecutors say this person poses no threat to public safety. But the fact remains, as Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren put it, we've had an innocent man locked up for a crime that he did not commit, while the real perpetrator was never held accountable for this horrific murder. After 37 years in prison, Robert Dubois was finally released last month and has been living in a home for the wrongfully imprisoned as he tries to reintegrate into a very unfamiliar society. On Monday, his conviction was finally reversed and his name removed from the sex offender registry. Andrew Warren apologized to Dubois on behalf of the entire criminal justice system. "I have been waiting for this day for nearly 37 years, said Dubois. I always knew that DNA would prove my innocence and hoped that the evidence could be found, not just for me, but for my family as well. I hope that my story helps others to keep fighting to prove their innocence. I can't get back the decades that I lost, but I'm going to try to rebuild my life with my family. It won't be easy. I am just so grateful that my voice was heard and the truth is out there." Unfortunately, under Florida's compensation law, Dubois is not eligible to receive any compensation for the nearly 4 decades he spent in prison, all because of some minor offenses he made as a teenager, including stealing a bike and entering a vacant home that was unlocked. Florida is the only state that refuses to compensate exonerees if they were convicted of unrelated crimes. The Innocence Project is advocating for legislation to remove this provision. We are so thankful to the Innocence Project for working so hard to eliminate the antiquated processes from our criminal justice system that only stand in the way of actual justice. And we wish all the best to Robert Dubois.
That's awesome. Last Saturday, South Dakota's Attorney General, Jason Ravnsborg, hit and killed a man with his car while driving home from a Republican fundraising dinner in Redfield around 9:15 p.m. According to Ravnsborg, he believed he had hit a deer on U.S. Highway 14. A release from Ravnsborg stated that he didn't see what he hit and stopped his vehicle immediately to investigate. He was alone in his car, uninjured, and said he had not had any alcohol at the fundraising event he attended. Authorities have said Ravnsborg called 911 sometime after the accident and told them he had hit a deer. The sheriff met Ravnsborg at the scene to assess the damage to his car and look for the deer. The two men then allegedly searched the area with a cell phone flashlight and did not find the body of 55-year-old Joseph Bover, whom Ravnsborg had hit with his car. Ravnsborg then borrowed the sheriff's personal vehicle to get home and returned back to the scene the next day, where he found Joseph deceased in a ditch where he had hit him. He drove to the sheriff's home to tell him about the body, and the two returned to the scene of the crime together. Joseph's cousin, Victor Nemec, said he was walking along the road to get his truck on Saturday night because it had broken down on the highway the night before. The South Dakota Highway Patrol is investigating, but many are doubting the Attorney General's story. Joseph's cousin, Nick Nemec, told South Dakota Public Broadcasting that he suspects Ravnsborg must have been distracted if he was unclear if he had hit a human or a deer. We've also heard conflicting information about the time of the accident. Ravnsborg first said 9:15 p.m., but the Highway Patrol has reported the accident happened at 10:30. It's unclear how long he waited to call 911 to report the accident. As someone who's from the country and has had many near run-in with deer, I can tell you there is a very big difference between a deer and a man. And also, like, one time when I was in high school, I was in a car with a friend and she hit somebody, unfortunately, while we were driving with her car. And it's a pretty unforgettable experience. It's kind of like when you're in an accident, time slows down, you remember all these small details. So I just can't imagine how you could possibly hit somebody with your car and think it was a deer.
Especially if he was supposedly sober and it doesn't add up.
Yeah, supposedly sober. Like, I just feel like they're like, best case scenario, there was a cell phone involved and he wasn't paying attention. Yeah. Worst case scenario, he's lying. Like, I just can't even imagine not realizing what you hit and thinking an animal had run off and gotten away when there's a man dying in a ditch next to your car where you stopped. Like, it seems like there's too many holes.
And deer are so antlery. You would know when you hit a deer that that's what it was, and you wouldn't assume that if you didn't feel the antlers. This week, we're watching Tread on Netflix. Tread tells the real-life story of master welder Marvin Heemeyer, who seeks revenge on the community of Granby, Colorado with a homemade bulldozer. The show plays recordings made by Heemeyer as he describes how the town's bureaucrats have made it impossible for him to run his business and have treated him as an outsider, causing him to lash out at their businesses. The documentary is reminiscent of the show Evil Genius, and we highly recommend checking it out.
We are so excited to have Abby and Ellie with us from this week's favorite podcast, Queers for Fears. Abby and Ellie are two best friends since toddlerhood who talk about all things creepy, spooky, and all the horrors of life. Thank you so much for joining us, Ellie and Abby. How are you doing today?
We're good. How are you?
Good.
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you here, so even better now.
Yeah. It's also fall weather, so I'm not ready for it. I'm very excited.
I don't have to listen to this. I put on boots because it was fast, not because it was weather.
Right. Yeah, it's like that weird time of the year, and I feel like this year, like, normally I'm excited for fall because it means Halloween's coming. I kind of like the spookiness of the weather change, but I feel like we had summer robbed from us and we didn't really get to do it. So I'm like, no. So I love that the two of you have been friends since childhood. And, like, personally, I haven't stayed in touch with anybody that I was childhood friends with. So I'm very, very impressed and jealous of your friendship together. But what inspired you to start a podcast together?
Honestly, quarantine.
It's like, I've been waiting for this answer as well.
I sheer boredom, but also there's just so much. So during quarantine, I started listening to a bunch of different podcasts that were great, and a lot of them are run by like super like empowering women that are funny and just entertaining. And I was like, you know what, like we could probably do that. We could try that. And there's just like this, you know, kind of lull in my life during quarantine because school closed, and I was like, oh man, like I'm so bored. What can I do? So, yeah, we were literally driving in the car, and I was like, we should do this. And Allie was like, yeah, sure.
We're best friends. We think we're hilarious, right? So we're always, whenever we say something, we're like, we should have our own show. And she's like, haha, we should have our own show. I'm like, yeah, dude. And then the next time I see her, she's like, so for our podcast, what do you think? Like, I've been looking at microphones and thinking of names, and I was like, oh, we're really going to have a podcast now. Okay.
Yep.
I don't have anything better to do either. I'm stuck at home all day.
I did, in fact, see something through.
Awesome. I love that. Well, I love that you cover a wide range of topics, from urban legends, mummies, murders, tarot cards. What is your spooky origin? What got you into creepy stories in the first place?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think, okay, this is going to sound weird, but I think slumber parties because, okay, sorry, mom and dad. My parents had some pretty strict rules about what I could and couldn't watch when I was a kid. Same. So slumber parties were kind of this way for me to rebel by watching, you know, horror movies and scary things. Of course, you know, I punished myself because I was up all night from being terrified.
Good job.
But yeah, I would definitely say just friends exposing me to scary movies. And I was like, oh man, I want more of this. I like being scared. I like kind of the feeling that it gives you, and my spooky origin, I would say.
For me, so my parents also had really strict rules about what I could watch. So the first R-rated movie I ever saw was The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise when I was in my mid-teens, because my parents were mostly strict about sexual content, but like murder, people getting chopped up, gore was like fine, whatever, mostly. So my mom and I would watch like ghost hunter TV shows and cheesy sci-fi movies where people get bitten in half by like a dinosaur, crocodile, pterodactyl creature, and stuff like that. And my parents also really loved the X-Files. And that I really liked because a lot of times it's sort of where it's kind of up to you. Like sometimes there's definitely something spooky going on, but it's like, we're the FBI. We can't say there's something spooky going on. And so it kind of says a lot about storytelling and where urban legend meets, you know, like truth or real things that happened, or how these stories get repackaged as urban legends. And so when the X-Files was running in reruns on the Sci-Fi Channel, my mom and I would watch it together. So that was probably where it started. I also really like being scared. I think as an anxious person, watching a scary movie is nice because it's like a controlled scare.
Yes, absolutely.
Unlike real life unpredictable scares.
Yeah, same for me. I think it's the same way. It's like this way I kind of know what to expect from life. I expect things to go badly, but this way I kind of know how to handle them.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of 2 hours, I can, you know,
Move on.
go read a book.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you've covered some really great stories on your podcast, from Satanic Panic to John Wayne Gacy. What stories have been your favorite to cover so far?
So I am currently doing this missing persons case. It's the Rucky missing persons case. And it's just full of like unexpected twists, and it really goes into the courtroom stuff. And I'm just like doing a complete deep dive and like losing myself in it. So I think that just with everything unexpected happening in that case has been my favorite so far. So it's coming soon, but yeah, that's definitely been a fun one to research.
Awesome.
I like the ones that are creepy on their face and there's something kind of like real life creepy behind it. So I really like the mummies episode because mummies are creepy. But also behind it, there's this history of colonialism and archaeology, which was also really interesting to go into. And, you know, that's totally my wheelhouse.
It's been so wonderful having both of you here today. Can you tell our viewers where they could find you on social media?
Sure can.
Oh no, we're bad at this.
We're so good.
We mess this up every time on the podcast. We should have practiced.
We are on Instagram and Facebook at Queers for Fears Podcast.
We're on Twitter at Queers Fears Pod.
And we're also on Patreon if you'd like to support a small podcast like ours, also at Queers for Fears Podcast.
And our Gmail account, which you were our first real email, so thank you for that.
Awesome.
Abby'smail.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. And be sure to subscribe to Queers for Fears wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single episode.
We are having a big giveaway, and you could win a big basket of murder merch just for registering at the MurderMurder.news commune. The prize basket includes our Murder Murder News tote bag and t-shirt, a Stay Spooky shirt in any size you like from Stay Lucky Boutique, a killer necklace from Forensic Miles, this Son of a Witch zip pouch from DeKaylee Shop, a Good Wine and True Crime sticker from Lacey Olson, and this Talk Murder to Me mug from Mug Matters Studio. All of this awesome murder merch, which is worth over $150 with no purchase necessary. All you have to do is go to MurderMurder.news to register your account and let us shower you with true crime presents. We'll have 2 winners, one in the US and one in Canada, and we'll announce the winners live on our channel in October. We love reading your comments, so long as you aren't a troll, and we wanted to thank Shayla Taylor for commenting that she is shaking her head over Braylon's suspicious death. She said that if the pool was already searched, someone must have put him there.
Thanks also to Angie Marie for commenting that she also finds Braylon's death suspicious. She doesn't see how a toddler could fall out of a third-story window and just get up and go.
Thanks so much for tuning into This Week in True Crime with Murder News. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below, give us a thumbs up, and tell all of your true crime friends.
If you just can't get enough true crime, join our commune at MurderMurder.news for our Monster Book Club and cold case solving groups. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. See you next week.